I work for the Auburn Technical Assistance Center, and we are out of the Harbert College of Business at Auburn University. That is located in Auburn, Alabama. With emotional intelligence, I'm passionate about the people side for sure. I love continuous improvement in general, but my background is I have a master's degree in industrial and organizational psychology, and that's just fancy for studying people at work, their motivation, engagement, retention, the HR pieces of it. But really, my passion is the motivation and engagement within the workplace, and how, as leaders, can we be better at creating that culture of engagement. I feel like 100% has to do with lean, because we need our people to be all on the same page and to be engaged to fulfill all the activities when it comes to lean tools and sustaining it, which we know is, in my experience, the hardest thing. So, all right. So the power of pause. Like I said, this is the second portion of emotional intelligence. The first one is self-awareness. So the first thing that we need to do is to actually become aware of the things that we need to work on, and then we can actually work on them. So today we'll be talking about the tools, some tools that you can use to help with whatever, you can identify that you need to work on. So these are the 4 pieces to emotional intelligence that we will discuss, and either now or in future trainings. Like I said, self-awareness, and then self-management. And of course, we have to work on ourselves before we can do anything with relationships. So we have to start with us. So then the next 2 sections will be social awareness and then relationship management. And a little bit of what we talked about before was how do I reflect? What are some ways that I can look back, or even in the moment see where I did really well? Because it's important to look at the things that I did well, but also the things that I need to work on and identify those things. And so in general, the definition that I have for emotional intelligence is the ability to accurately assess your own and others' feelings and emotions, and use the assessment to guide intentional thinking and actions. The first thing I wanted to discuss is something called neuroplasticity. It's a big word, but it's talking about how our brain doesn't stop growing, or doesn't have the potential to stop growing for as long as we live. We have the ability to adapt and change things, and so this video will introduce that.
Not so long ago, many scientists believed that the brain did not change after childhood, that it was hardwired and fixed by the time we became adults. But recent advances in only the last decade now tell us that this is simply not true. The brain can and does change throughout our lives. It is adaptable, like plastic. Hence, neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. How does neuroplasticity work? If you think of your brain as a dynamic, connected power grid, there are billions of pathways or roads lighting up every time you think, feel, or do something. Some of these roads are well-traveled. These are our habits, our established ways of thinking, feeling, and doing. Every time we think in a certain way, practice a particular task, or feel a specific emotion, we strengthen this road. It becomes easier for our brains to travel this pathway. Say we think about something differently, learn a new task, or choose a different emotion. We start carving out a new road. If we keep traveling that road, our brains begin to use this pathway more, and this new way of thinking, feeling, or doing becomes second nature. The old pathway gets used less and less and weakens. This process of rewiring your brain by forming new connections and weakening old ones is neuroplasticity in action. The good news is that we all have the ability to learn and change by rewiring our brains. If you have ever changed a bad habit or thought about something differently, you have carved a new pathway in your brain and experienced neuroplasticity firsthand. With repeated and directed attention towards your desired change, you can rewire your brain.
The really cool thing about neuroplasticity, or the idea of it, is that when it comes to habits, what we're looking at, I have something that I want to change, to be better, to improve. The way that we've reacted in the past, or the way that we've handled it, probably the same way every time. And so we've created those neural paths where it's second nature. Our brain wants to expend the least amount of energy as possible. That's a part of its job, what it wants to do. And so what it does is it creates these habits. When we do something that is habitual, we go on autopilot. So I have a question. Does anybody drive home the same way every day? Overall, yeses, right? Have you ever gotten home after driving and said, I don't remember the last 10 minutes. What was I doing? You know, maybe it's just me. But what happens is we get on that habit. We go the same way home. We know the route we're taking. We know the way that we need to go. And our brain turns to autopilot because now it can focus on other things or it doesn't need to expend as much energy. And it happens all the time. Anytime we have a reaction to something, our normal reaction, it's an autopilot reaction. So, what do we need to do to change that? Well, we have to be intentional, but it takes extra energy because we have to think about it. So, for instance, like when we first start learning how to drive, we've got to think, okay, I've got to turn the key, turn it on, here's my signals, which one's the gas. We're thinking about all those things. But eventually, with practice and time, it becomes a habit and we do those things without even thinking about it. So, what we have to do is practice that new habit. So, whatever that we want to change, you can't expect it to be an overnight thing. Even when we are first becoming aware of it, like, oh, I've identified now I need to change that. Well, it's going to take some time, just like any other habit that we try to change, like smoking or something like that. One thing that we can do is to increase our neuroplasticity in general to help our brain to be healthier, to be more likely to succeed in those things. If we do take the same way home every day, how about we take a different way? We'll have to think about it, right? So think about what things in your day to day that you can do differently. And that's exercising our brain, basically. We have to think about it more, and it helps our brain's a muscle, so it makes it stronger, right? Muscle memory. Exactly. Amina, thank you. It is muscle memory. Also, something else that we can do is doing an activity outside of your norm. So try something new or just doing it a different way. There's two sides to the brain, left brain and right brain. Right brain is more the creative, the artsy side. Left brain is more analytical, spreadsheets or whatnot. Try to do something outside of your typical. If you're typically right, do something on the left. If you're on the left, do something right. It's the same idea of interrupting the flow is that you're having to put forth more energy, so you're exercising your brain. And then in general, try something new. I put this beekeeping picture here on the left. I'm going to be getting bees in a few weeks, and I'm super excited about that. A little bit nervous too, but try something new. Of course, what a lot of people talk about in different areas is meditating, but now instead of working your brain or working that muscle, and this is a little bit different, the meditate, I am trying to clear everything out, trying to flush it out and meditating on those positive things or the things I need to change. And just, during our day to day, sometimes it's hard to figure out when we meditate. Does anybody currently spend time meditating at all? And if you do, when do you find time to do that? Okay, 30 minutes. First thing when I get up, praying every morning, first thing. When the kids are in bed, yes, it's very hard to meditate when you got kids around. Some people not as good about it. Oh, walking meditation. That's great. I love being outside. So that would be something that I would like to do during yoga. Absolutely. And what I find is that when I'm trying to put something into my routine that's not normal, I've got to set an alarm. I've got to actually schedule it. It seems a little silly, but if I don't put those stops or those reminders in, I will forget or just other things come up. And so I'll have to think about, okay, when would maybe be the best time to do it, whether it's in the morning or at night or on a walk or whatever, maybe during lunch, at work, if there's a moment you can get away, and putting an alarm on your phone that says, hey, do this. And you're more likely to succeed with it, whether it's meditating or anything else that you're trying to do. Taryn says the book Atomic Habits has great tips on how to adopt new habits, like meditating. It's great. And Amina seconds the book. So, okay, popular. Exercising. We all know that exercising is important. It's for, keeping you healthy or whatnot. But the cool thing is exercise is actually good for your brain as well. There's been lots of research done that it boosts your brain-derived neurotropic factor, mouthful, BDNF, which increases neurogenesis, which is basically making new cells in the brain. So just another reason why exercising is important. It should be a regular part of your routine. And again, just try to schedule that in and do as much as we can. And starting out a little at a time. That's what I find with exercising, at least specifically, is like just do 5 minutes. Like set an alarm and do 5 minutes. Because we can do 5 minutes, right? We can stop and do 5 minutes. And then once that becomes a habit of doing that 5 minutes, maybe a few times a day, then increase it to maybe 10 minutes. Because it's trying to create those new paths, like the neuroplasticity video said. We want to make the new path bigger and then the old path smaller. And with that, I always think about like the beach, right? If I'm a kid or even as an adult, I have kids, build a castle and try to build the moat, the thing around the castle to keep the water from destroying the castle, right? I've got to keep digging it because what happens if you're on the shoreline, the water comes up and it pulls that away. But eventually, if I can dig it big enough, then I won't have to consistently be digging it. But that first, few minutes of digging, I've got to be on top of it the whole time, digging, digging, digging. And that's how we have to be when we're creating new habits. I really have to be on top of it initially. And then once it becomes a habit, then we can start going on autopilot and we won't have to worry about it as much. So, we are all emotional people. We talked about this in the previous session a little bit more in depth, but I wanted to cover it again. I think, like, if y'all heard the word, like, hey, this person's emotional, what word comes to mind? Moody, volatile, sensitive, overreacting, out of control, reactive. Yeah, so I feel like in general, and if you have a different idea, you absolutely put it in the chat. But do you agree that in general, when we talk about emotions or emotional people, it's considered negative, has somewhat of a negative connotation to it? Yeah. Yeah, and it shouldn't be, absolutely, Jody. And that's the thing. It's we all have this, the word even emotional has this negative stigma to it. And how can we start to change that perception in our mind to understand that when we say emotional and attributed to women, absolutely, for sure, that there's a range of emotions and we all are emotional. And again, it's going back to the brain. So our brain has a part of it that's called the amygdala, right? And every single stimulus that happens, every single experience that is presented in front of us goes into the amygdala first. This is the emotional part of our brain. It's the part the fight or flight. And the fight or flight obviously is necessary because if I have a stimulus that comes at me that I need an immediate reaction, something scary or somebody's trying to attack me or whatever, like I need to be able to react quick. Well, the amygdala is what allows us to do that. So we need it. But what happens is that every stimulus goes through that. So if we're not careful, we have these immediate responses based on how it makes us feel or our emotional response to it. And that's where a lot of times it can get us into trouble. And so what happens eventually is that if we give it more time, process the stimulus, whatever it is, then it goes to the prefrontal cortex in the front, and that's our logical part of the brain. And we can make a more logical decision about it. And so we talked about, okay, for example, why do you think department stores put shoes at the entrance? I love shoes. Not everybody does, but a lot of people like shoes. And so I'm not maybe going to the store to buy shoes, but I walk in, I'm like, oh, those are pretty. And I go to look at them, right? Even though I didn't go to the store to buy the shoes. But marketing people know really well, hey, we want to get the emotions involved and get that instant gratification, like before they have time to think about it. But if you don't get those shoes right then and you continue into the store and you go to buy the pair of pants that your daughter absolutely needed and they're like $80, you're like, yeah, I'm not going to buy those pair of shoes because this is already really expensive. It's that transition from the emotional response to the logical reasoning. When it comes to us and how we interact with people, we have triggers, and we'll talk more about that. But when we have that instant overreaction or of an emotion, that's what it is. It's in the amygdala. But when we go back and reflect, a lot of the times we're thinking like, why did that, man, I overreacted. Like, why did that happen? Well, we just didn't give it enough time. We didn't pause, which is, hence the term or hence the title of the session is the power of pause. So I just wanted to go into that a little bit. So emotional hijacking. The more intense your emotion is, the greater likelihood that it will dictate your actions and cause this emotional hijack. And so, like I said, the emotional hijack is the amygdala taking over the normal reasoning process. People have different reactions to the same stimulus, and it's based off of, or the same experience, it's based off of who we are, right? It's based off of our previous experiences, it's based off of our morals, how we were brought up, and just everything that we've experienced in life prior to that moment. To give you an example, I was in a training one time talking about this similar thing, and the lady said that her team went to a class for CPR. It was put on by her job and didn't think anything of it, whatever. So she goes to the class. And as soon as the instructor started to show the chest compressions, she started to freak out and was having anxiety or whatnot. She had to leave the room and she couldn't think of why initially. But then as she thought about it, she realized her dad had just had a heart attack a few months before at the house. And she saw the EMS people doing the chest compressions, and being in that situation in the room with the instructor just brought her back. Well, the average person is not going to have that, right? But it was her specific situation and her previous experiences that created this overwhelming emotional response, right? Most people can probably relate with traffic. Anybody? I don't like being cut off. And it drives me crazy when people drive slow in the fast lane or whatnot. I don't know why it creates this crazy reaction, but it's something that I'm aware of and addressed and whatnot. But again, it's a hijacking. I get a little bit crazy or whatever. So what can we do about it? All right, we know we need to identify these things. What are my typical emotional hijacking or the potentials for that? So what do I do about it if that situation presents itself again? The first thing, breathe. I know we hear about it a lot, maybe or whatever, but goodness, it really does work. We take a moment, count to 10, do that pause, taking some deep breaths, right? You feel so much better. Has anybody ever tried that and had a good experience? Hopefully. All the time, teaching the kids to do it. Hopefully, you're a good example of showing them how to do it because I know I have to do that a lot with my kids. Taking deep breaths. It works great with kids, yeah. Count to 50, absolutely. Oh, cool. Daniel says that his wife is a psychologist and he teaches him things. Mark can't count high enough. I know. But that's important to think about, though. Those things where you can't count high enough, those are the most important to try to figure out what I can do to not have this overwhelming response, right? And we all do it. It just depends on what it is. Or it's different for everybody else. Cool. So, yeah, just pause. The interesting thing is, though, is that obviously, it's not easy. I remember, gosh, it's probably been like 15 years ago now, or maybe 14 years. I was doing my undergrad and I had this professor, I think it was a leadership class that I was taking, and he said something about, or he showed a video of a family at a breakfast table and the kid spills the orange juice and the dad freaks out or whatever. And then it shows the kid going to school and he's upset or whatever because the dad yelled at him. The dad goes to work and he's feeling guilty because he yelled at his kids for spilling orange juice, right? But then it shows another video of the same situation. The kid spills the orange juice, but then the dad reacted positively or well and was just like, hey, it happens, just clean it up, we'll go. And then talks about how we have the power to pause. And for me, and I think for other people, maybe not everybody in this class, because you guys are wanting to learn about emotional intelligence, but I didn't realize that there was even a chance to pause. That was such an eye-opening experience for me. At the time, I was a single mom with my first baby, and he was like toddler age, and it's like hitting home, right, with the spilled milk. And it's silly because it happens. We all do it. But it's like, I've got so many other things to worry about. Now I got to clean up this spilled milk. And I just was like, I am in control of that. I can improve that. We have all these things on the outside that happens that can be really frustrating and are really frustrating, but I still have the power to how I'm going to respond. I cannot control what comes into my head, right? I cannot control that it made me mad, but I can control what comes out, the words and the actions, right? And so that's what we need to do. Carla, another strategy is to take a word at least 5 letters long and mentally spell it backwards, forces your brain away from the emotional response. That is so cool. I love that. Especially for me, I'm a terrible speller, so it would take me some time. Yeah, David, 90% reaction, 10% circumstance. Jody says, when I was a manager, I carried my water bottle with me. It seemed that people liked to try hijacking when I was walking about the factory. If there was a question or comment, I took a sip before reacting at all. That's great. Yeah. And that to me is that's so cool because it's something it's not obvious. Like it's not like you're saying, hey, just give me a second. Like what you said just pissed me off. It's like, hold on. You pretend like I got a little cough and take a sip. Yes, and you can't unsay something once you say it. That whole saying about sticks and stones may break your bones, it never hurt me or whatever. That is so untrue. Words hurt. So another thing, sleep on it. I know some people say like don't go to sleep angry. I don't agree with that. I feel like sometimes, especially at home, whatever, something's going on, like maybe not be completely silent about it. Just say, hey, like I'm a little upset. I'm gonna sleep about it, think about it, or whatever. But yeah, sleep on it because again, it's giving that time for that emotion to ebb, and it's going into the logical where we can have more reasoning with it. David said, sticks break my bones, but words cut to the heart. Yeah, absolutely. And that's harder to mend than bones breaking for sure. Putting a mental recharge in your schedule. So again, we've got to be intentional. So what can I do? I can put it in my schedule. I can set an alarm and say like, oh, I need to take a few minutes. Maybe think about if I am stressed, do I need to take 5 and take some breaths or whatever? And as we progress in this, if we're keeping a journal, if we're doing some type of reflection, try to think about the time of the day that you're most likely to be super stressed or super overwhelmed or frustrated or mad, depending on whether it's at work or at home, and put that alarm at that time or right around that time. So you're like, oh, yeah, I need that reminder, like take a breath. Smile and laugh more. I mean, again, all of these things are really easy, but we're so busy. I think sometimes we forget to do stuff fun, or stuff that makes us feel good, right? So again, we can schedule it. I love music. So that for me, like I know if I'm in a bad mood, I put on my music and there'll be sometimes like I don't want to put my music on, because I know it'll make me feel better. But then I put it on and before you know it, I'm like singing a song. I'm like, dang it. Watch comedy, something, but something you smile and laugh more, right? Having an accountability partner. This one's probably the hardest one for me, at least. Unofficially, my husband. Yeah, the spouse is definitely, they will tell you when you're being difficult, whether you want to hear it or not, most of the time. Yeah. Having somebody that you trust, and again, whether it's you're trying at work or at home, all of these things apply to both. That's what I love about the trainings that we do is it applies both places. My boss when I screw up, yeah, best friend, meet with a friend monthly to exchange goals, challenges, achievements. That's really cool, David. So having somebody that you've set up and they are aware and say, hey, this is what I'm working on. And so if you ever see me start to go down this path or whatever, can we create some type of signal or you pull me aside or something to just be like, hey, you need to tone it down. It could just be, they're in the background and they take a step back and they do this like, oh, or tone it down, something to get your mind out of it. Like, oh, just a little reminder. Or something even after the fact, like, hey, I noticed this. So what, I noticed you did it during this time or, point those things out. We talked about in the last session If you're having trouble thinking of things you need to work on, ask those people closest to you. So like the spouse or the kids or the parents or something like that, or a best friend, like, hey, what do I need to work on? They will tell you more than what you want to know for sure. The next one is visualization. So visualizing the desired state. This is probably something that's a little more unusual, but it's super helpful. Has anybody else done that in the past, visualizing like where they want to be? And not just like daydreaming, but like visualizing like, hey, this is, so you can see what it is, how it would work. I react this certain way to the same stimulus every time, let's say, whatever that trigger may be or whatnot. I know it, I'm aware of it. So what do I do? Think about how you should respond or how you would like to respond in that situation. And then picture it. Because when you picture it, it may not have actually happened, but now you can see how it should happen. And then it'll be a little bit easier to do it when that stimulus actually occurs. Like, oh, I've already seen how it should happen, because I can see it. I've gone through it in my head and see how it should go. It's really cool. Okay. So there's something that I call the mood elevator, and just another tactic when it comes to addressing like the things that we need to address. Sorry. Our moods, right? Moods are contagious. Yes? Everybody agree that moods are contagious? Whether bad or good. Yeah. Oh, thumbs up, Jody. Thanks. That's cool. Absolutely. Moods are contagious. So now not only am I affecting myself, this is getting a little bit into the social aspect, but my moods have the ability to affect other people. It shouldn't, because we should all learn to, to think about how we're feeling and go with that, but it happens all the time. And so another thing to make sure that I'm not bringing people down is that think about it as an elevator, right? The upper level floors are all the positive moods, and then the lower level floors are the negative moods. Try to have that hard stop. There's a break in the elevator. If something happened and the lines broke, there's actually a break and it stops the elevator. Try to make curiosity that break. So if you're in a really good mood and something happens and you're starting to go down, and you recognize that, like, hey, my mood, like I'm starting to get frustrated or stressed or whatever, stop and ask the question, why? Why am I feeling this way? Does it have to do with the current situation? Is it something that happened earlier today? Is it something that's been on my mind? Maybe that's something bad that's going on in my family or something or whatnot. Or is it the stimulus that just happened was because of another stimulus, like with the lady with the chest compressions? Think about it. Try to pinpoint why. Because again, when we start to understand more about our triggers and why they trigger us, it's easier then to overcome as well. Oh, thanks, Manny. I put a lot of stuff on there. And then the next thing, and I covered it a little bit, but remember, we have a choice. And I think that's, again, one of the harder things. We have a choice of how we respond. We can't control anything else that happens around us, what other people do, I mean, but we can control ourselves and we have that choice. So I'm going to show another video. And also I want to say too that Manny does like the video after this, like it's recorded, and then you'll have access to that. And then I can't remember, Manny, do you also provide the slides, like a
Yeah.
PDF slides?
As long as
Yes.
the presenter provides them to me, yes, I do.
Okay.
That'll be part of the review.
Okay, cool. So y'all will get the PDF of the slides, but also I'm going to include another handout. It's called Micro Practices, and it goes along with these strategies. It's just additional strategies, and it talks about different ways, like of different types of breathing or different things that we can do at different times. So I just wanted to let you know that. So now the video on remembering that we have a choice.
Imagine a microscopic-sized ladder contained in the part of our brain that will label our subconscious. The ladder of inference, which was first proposed by Harvard professor Chris Argyris, is the basis of this model. Every time we interact with someone, that experience enters the ladder at the bottom. That same experience zips up the ladder in the blink of an eye, exiting at the top. This process happens thousands of times a day without us knowing it. Let's focus on what happens on each rung of the ladder. On the first rung, we have the raw data and observations of our experience. This is very similar to what someone watching a video recording of our experience. Moving up to the second rung, we filter in specific information and details. We unknowingly filter based on our preferences, tendencies, and many other aspects that we believe are important. Onto the third rung, we assign meaning to the information we have filtered through. This is where we start to interpret what our information is telling us. On the fourth rung, a very crucial thing happens. We develop assumptions based on the meaning we created on the previous rung, and we start to blur the distinction between what is fact and what is story. On the fifth rung, we develop conclusions based on our assumptions. This is also where our emotional reactions are created. On the sixth rung, we adjust our beliefs about the world around us, including the person or people involved in our experience of the moment. On the seventh and final rung, we take action based on our adjusted beliefs. Still with me? Great. Let's take a real-life example and run it up the ladder to see how this all works. Have you ever been cut off in a parking lot, signal light on, as you steer toward your coveted spot only to slam on your brakes at the last minute as someone pulls in front of you and steals your spot away? Imagine that experience and notice all of the data and observations landing on the first rung of your ladder. Now let's watch what we pay attention to on the second rung. Who cares that it's sunny out and the birds are chirping? The 50% off sign outside of your favorite store is meaningless. You filter in the sensation of your grip tightening on the wheel, you feel your blood pressure rise, you hear the squeal of your brakes, and you notice the expression on the face of the other driver as he pulls in front of you, quickly looks away. Time for our third rung. Ever since you were young, your parents taught you the importance of waiting in line and taking your turn. You live and die by the rule of first come, first served. And now this guy has just stolen your spot. What gives? Up to the fourth rung we go. Watch closely as our assumptions take over and our story creates itself. That stupid jerk. Didn't his parents teach him anything? How could he not see my signal light? He must never pay attention. Why does he think he's more important than anyone else? Jumping quickly to the fifth rung, we conclude that this guy is heartless, inconsiderate. He needs to be taught a lesson and put in his place. We feel angry, frustrated, vindictive, justified. On our sixth rung, we adjust our beliefs based on the experience. That's the last time I give in. Next time someone tries to cut me off, tires will be smoking on the pavement as I squeal past them into my spot. And finally, our last rung, we take action. We back up, pull up behind his car, honk our horn, and roll down our window to scream a few choice words, isn't it? Now, imagine, he walks over quickly, apologizing. His wife, who's almost due with their first baby, called him from inside the mall to say she is in labor and needs to get to the hospital immediately. We are momentarily shocked, apologize profusely, and wish him luck as he rushes toward the entrance. What just happened here? What changed? Why is this so significant? In our parking lot example, our beliefs were short-circuited by the ladder of the other individual. My wife is in labor. I need to get there quick. There's a parking spot. Phew! Oh, geez, I cut someone off. I better apologize quickly so they don't think I'm a jerk. But what if we were able to short-circuit our ladders ourselves, proactively, by choice? Guess what? We can. Let's return to our unique human function of free will. Next time you notice yourself reacting to your experience, pay focused attention to your ladder. Ask yourself what beliefs are at play and where did they come from? What data and observations did you filter in as a result of your beliefs? And why? Are your assumptions valid and supported by facts? Would a different set of assumptions create different feelings and result in new and better conclusions and actions? We all have our own unique ladder. Be mindful of yours and help others to see theirs.
All right. So this video is like super detailed about almost instantaneous things, our stimulus, our reactions, or whatever. That, like it said, all these things happen within a matter of seconds, and it's so crazy to think about. for me, when I first saw the video, I was like, wow, that's super powerful because of all this stuff where it could go wrong in our head and we can do the thing that we regret or whatever and when we learn to work on. Which areas do you think get us in the most trouble? Yeah, assumptions. Absolutely. And action. Absolutely. I agree. I think those are the two areas that can get us into the most trouble. I think the raw data observation, obviously that's going to happen. I think the filtering isn't automatic. There's not as much we can do at that moment. Even the assigning meaning, those are all part of the emotional response in our heads. And then so is the creating assumptions, but that's where we can say, like, okay, put a pause. Is that accurate? Right? Is it true? Is there another way that I could look at it? Am I being biased in a certain way because of my previous experiences? And so we could put that short circuit, like he said, at that point. But even if it goes farther up the ladder, we still have time, right? We can have those assumptions, we can draw conclusions, but if we can still pause before we take that action, whether it's words or whatever that we do, and say, we may still assume the things and still think that part is right, but we can still choose not to act the way that we're wanting to act. Daniel said, not taking action and thinking about it first. Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I have done for my stuff, going back to the trigger of the car, and I'm giving you an example, and we're going to talk about triggers and how to work on them next, but the getting cut off, right? So, and normally I would think, like, why does that person think he's better than me? I drive him crazy and he's got to get somewhere faster than I do. Like, we're all trying to get somewhere or whatever. And then, but me being mad at that person does nothing to them, right? It only does stuff to me. It hinders my mood. It causes me stress, right? All these negative things. And so I've told myself in that situation, right? What if that person really had an emergency? What if we did get a call, kind of like in the video, and somebody that is in the ER? I probably wouldn't be paying as much attention to the people around me, and I may cut somebody off, right? Is that happening every time we get cut off? No, but I'm going to tell myself that every time because that's what works for me, and that's what helps to keep me leveled, and that's better for me. Jay says, I'm a big fan of getting instant answers. Phoning somebody at work mattered for weeks, find out that they had passed away, just as an example. So let's talk about triggers, right? We're going to do a little exercise. Okay. So this is a list of typical triggers. Typical, I don't know, could be whatever. The list in reality is infinite, right? But I want you guys to look through this list and write it down. And you can pick more than one, but for now, oh, Elena, that's why he kept ignoring your phone calls. Yeah. So pick one, and then we're going to do a little exercise with it. Let's see how much time we have. We have 10 minutes. That's good. And if you feel obliged, put it in the chat which one is big for you. And you could just put the number. Number 30, let's see. Something unexpected happens and messes up your schedule. Number 7, your boss takes over. 19, you're told you can't do something. That really is frustrating, but also gives me motivation. 17, being cut off in traffic. Yay, who said that? Sue, you and I are on the same page. Number 2, your boss belittles you. Employee that doesn't respect my authority. A boss blames you for a report your coworkers were responsible for. Let's see what we got. 16, get stuck in traffic and you'll be late for an important meeting. Yeah, number 22, you're accused of doing something you did not do. That's really big for me as well. Like, I feel like in general, I'm a pretty honest person. And when I do something wrong, I'll admit it. So if you are questioning my, my morals or whatever, like, that's super frustrating. Someone takes credit for your work. So, being dismissive. Okay. So hopefully everybody has one. Remember it. So what I want you to do is write the trigger down. Try to identify, why does this trigger you? Like in the instance of being cut off, I feel like the person is frustrating. I'm trying to get somewhere too, and they think that they're better than me, right? Then what is your reaction? For me, get angry, whatever. Sometimes I yell at them, even though they can't hear me. And then the biggest part of this too, what do I need to remind myself to stay in control when confronted by my trigger? Out of all the things that we've discussed, maybe other things that you've thought about, what can I do to remain in control? And then maybe something that you can do to stay in control, to not like have that emotional hijacking or that like overly emotional response.
Traffic is one of my triggers, especially when people do things. I live very close to New Jersey where people make a habit of cutting in front of you and then getting off at the exit when had they just stayed right behind me,
Yes.
like 2 seconds later.
Yes.
So I used to try yelling at them. I realized it only got me worked up. But
Right.
they were just, free to continue doing whatever they do.
Yeah. I will say it like that. What I learned from that, like thinking about like, hey, maybe they have an emergency situation, that came from actually my coworker. So we do a lot of consulting and stuff, coaching for healthcare. And he was driving to a client, which was a hospital. Somebody cut him off and he gets all mad. He gets to the hospital and that same car was in the ER. And that was just like for him, one of those eye-opening moments, like the pendulum swing of the perspective or whatever, like, oh my gosh, like here I was getting mad at them and they were actually in an emergency situation. Okay. So Jenny says, something unexpected hijacks my day. That's her trigger. I need to remind myself that stuff happens. And if I get upset, it only wastes more time. That's great. Daniel, being around certain people. Why? Some people are just rude, not nice, pushy. Sure. Absolutely. I actually have been trying to learn different personalities and learning how to calming interact with them. That's really cool. And then Frank says, when people do not get back with me, I react because I think it's impolite, right? So I tell myself they're probably busy and just give them more time to respond. Then we'll eventually remind them. Yeah. Amina, schedule gets interrupted for no fault, reaction, fight. Yeah. We'll try and remind myself to sleep on it and then react to make the other person realize the mistake. Sure. Now, I have a question. I see somebody on here that's Ty Fortenberry. Is that the same Tyler Fortenberry that's done work with ATAC before? Maybe not. Because I saw the name and I was like, oh, I've worked with a Tyler Fortenberry before. Anybody else want to share? I know it's a lot of typing. Phil says I try to remember that everyone has a story. Yeah. Like in the video, you never know what problems the other person has. Carla being dismissed. Don't feel valued. Reaction is kind of sullen and reminding myself I have control and I can change the situation. Absolutely. Jenna, sorry if I mispronounced your name. People interrupting before I finish my sentence. Triggers, I typically think quite a bit before speaking to complete my thought. If they interrupt, I need to remind myself I can still finish and share my thoughts when they're done, or maybe interrupt them. Yeah, Jenna, I'm that person. I tend to jump the gun. I apologize for all those people that do that. I talk really fast. And so, like, when there's an instant pause, I'm like, oh, they're done. I'm going to talk. So I apologize. Mark, when my boss takes over my meeting, I try to re-interject, guide the conversation back to the topic. I remind myself that we need to stay focused despite the interruption. Absolutely. Oh, that's a good one, Dawn. I think about if it's going to bother me tomorrow, next week, next month. If so, can I let it go now instead of waiting? And then on the flip side of that, if you think it's still going to bother you, maybe we should address it. Maybe if it's with another person and you think it might affect that relationship, maybe it's something that, hey, I just need to have a conversation with, but not right at that moment when you're mad. Right. If it won't bother you in a week, I should just give it up now. And most of the time, I find most things don't bother me after some time. So just let it go. Well, thank y'all so much for all your input. That is the end of my session.